Get up. Alpha Kalen's voice wasn't a request, it was a chisel, chipping away the last of her dignity. Ilara's cheek was pressed into the cold flagstones of the great hall, the metallic tang of her own blood sharp on her tongue. Laughter echoed around her, sharp and cruel as the claws that had raked her back years ago, leaving the very scars they now despised. Lyra, Kalen's favored beta, nudged Ilara's ribs with a pointed boot, her crimson-painted toenails digging in. She's pathetic, Alpha. She stains the floor. Make her leave before she sours the mating moon. Ilara's hands, slick with blood from where she tried to break her fall, trembled. She squeezed her eyes shut, a single hot tear of pure despair escaping. It wasn't the pain that broke her. It was the utter, crushing silence from the one wolf her soul was tethered to. He won't even look at me. He wouldn't even acknowledge the mate bond he'd shattered 1,000 times over with his contempt. And in that abyss of rejection, something fractured. Not her bones, but the dam holding back a power she never knew she possessed. A soft, pearlescent light began to seep from her skin, pooling around her like liquid moonlight, silencing the laughter instantly. Wait, before the next revelation unfolds. If this mystery has already captivated you, let us know where you're following this story from. To ensure you don't miss unexpected claims, broken bonds, or awakenings under the moon, subscribe and stay close. Now, back to the scene. The light throbbed, a heartbeat of its own, pulsing from the very center of her being. The blood on her hands didn't just glow, it dissolved, turning into harmless, shimmering dust. The cut on her cheek sealed, the skin knitting back together with an audible sigh. The pack's mockery died in their throats, replaced by gasps of shock and a sudden primal fear. Ilara pushed herself up to her elbows, her matted brown hair falling away from her face. Her eyes, usually a dull, frightened hazel, were now blazing with an inner illumination. The light wasn't just on her, it was in her. And the scars, oh, the goddess! The thick, ropey scars that covered her back and shoulders, the marks of her shame, were now the source of the brilliance. They weren't ugly, keloid tissue anymore. They were intricate, silver-gold lines, glowing like constellations mapped across her skin. Kalen finally moved. He took a step back, his broad shoulders tensing. His alpha senses were screaming, overwhelmed by a scent he'd deliberately ignored for years. Her usual faint smell of willow and rain was now amplified, infused with something ancient and powerful, like ozone and burning stars. His wolf, the beast he prided himself on controlling, was scratching at the inside of his chest, howling one word: mate, mate, mate. He had rejected this bond since the day it snapped into place 2 years ago. He was the alpha of the Stonecrest pack, a direct descendant of the first wolves. He needed a strong Luna, a warrior, a diplomat. Not this. Not a broken, scarred Omega who spent her days scrubbing floors and flinching from shadows. He had told himself the moon goddess had erred. What sorcery is this? Lyra hissed, but her voice trembled. She scrambled away from Elara, her bravado vanishing. Elara didn't answer. She didn't know how. She only knew that the crushing weight of their scorn was, for the first time, being overshadowed by a strange humming warmth. The power coiling in her stomach felt like a shield. She rose slowly, unsteadily, to her feet. The simple linen shift she wore, stained and torn, now seemed to ripple with celestial light. She looked at her hands, then up at the hundreds of wolves staring at her in stunned silence. Her gaze finally landed on Kalen.
He was the perfect alpha. Tall, powerful, with eyes the color of a winter storm and hair as black as a raven's wing.
He was everything she had ever dreamed of and the source of her deepest agony. He stared at her, his face an unreadable mask of stone, but his hands were clenched at his sides, his knuckles white. The air between them crackled, the dormant mate bond flaring to life like a forest fire. It was no longer a thread he could ignore. It was a steel cable dragging him forward. "Kaelin," she whispered, and the name was an accusation, a plea, and a prayer all at once. He flinched, as if she had struck him. The mask broke. His eyes widened, not just in shock, but in a dawning, agonizing recognition. This radiance was coming from his mate, the one he had thrown away, the one he had allowed his pack to torture. "What are you?" he breathed, the words torn from him. He took a step toward her. The pack gasped as one. The Alpha was approaching the Omega, not to punish, but to what? Ilara held her ground, the light flaring brighter, defensively. He stopped a few feet away, the power rolling off her in waves, making his teeth ache. He felt an inexplicable urge to bow, to appease this ancient energy that wore the face of the woman he despised. His knees unlocked, his body betraying his mind. He didn't fall, not completely, but he stumbled, catching himself on one knee. It wasn't reverence, it was shock. He stared at the glowing patterns on her skin, mesmerized. I don't know," Ilara whispered, the truth raw and terrifying. The energy was too much. The shock, the humiliation, and now this terrifying, brilliant power. It crested. Her vision tunneled. The last thing she saw before the darkness claimed her was Kaelin's horrified, uncomprehending face, his hand outstretched as if to catch her, or perhaps to push her away. She fainted, collapsing back onto the stone floor, and the glow vanished, plunging the great hall back into torchlight, leaving only an echoing silence and the smell of ozone. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Kaelin remained on one knee, frozen. Lyra, seeing her chance, surged forward. "It was a trick, a glamour. She's a witch, an abomination. Alpha, destroy it!" Kaelin's head snapped up. His eyes, now burning with a different kind of fire, locked on to Lyra. He rose to his full, intimidating height, and his voice wasn't a chisel, it was a landslide. Silence. He didn't shout, but the command ripped through the hall, making every wolf, including Lyra, shrink back. He stalked past her, his movements fluid and dangerous. He crouched beside Ilara's still form. He hesitated for only a second, his mind at war. She's a threat. She's a curse. She's mine. His wolf won. With a gentleness that stunned the onlookers, Kaelin slid his arms beneath her, lifting her from the ground. Her head lolled against his chest, her scarred back pressed against his arm. He expected to feel revulsion. He felt a jolt, a hum, as if her skin was still vibrating with that celestial energy. He turned, Ilara cradled in his arms. The pack parted for him, their faces a mixture of fear and confusion. "The mating moon is suspended," he growled. "No one is to speak of what they saw. No one." He pinned Lyra with a final warning glare. "Especially you." He swept from the hall, not toward the Omega dens where she belonged, but toward the Alpha's tower, toward the private chambers of the pack healer. His pack was in chaos, his mind was in turmoil, and the unconscious woman in his arms, the woman he had tried so hard to erase from his life, had just become the center of it. Elara awoke to the scent of dried herbs and beeswax. She was lying on something soft, a fur-pelted cot, not her lumpy straw mattress. Her body ached, not from a beating, but with a deep, resonant exhaustion, as if she had run for miles. "Ah, you are awake." Elara sat up too quickly, her head spinning. Morwen, the pack's eldest healer, sat in a rocking chair by a low fire, her ancient face webbed with wrinkles.
She wasn't looking at Elara, but at the flames. "Where? What happened?" Elara's voice was hoarse. "You caused quite the stir, child," Morwen said, her voice like dry leaves. "Upset the Alpha's little ceremony." The memories rushed back. The laughter, the boot in her ribs, Kalen's coldness, the glow. Elara looked down at her hands, her arms. They were just skin, pale, thin, and marred by the familiar silvery pink lines of her old scars. There was no glow. Was it real?" Elara whispered, terrified it had been a dream, but even more terrified that it hadn't. "As real as the pain they caused you," Morwen said, finally turning. Her eyes were milky with age, but they seemed to see more than most. "The Alpha is confused. He has posted guards outside this door. He doesn't know whether to protect you or imprison you." "Protect me?" Elara laughed, a bitter, broken sound. "He's never protected me. He's the one I needed protection from. He is your mate, Elara. He rejected me." The words were flat, dead. "He denied you," Morwen corrected gently. "Rejection is a formal ritual, a severing of the bond. He has never done it. He was too proud and too afraid. His wolf knew. His man's pride fought it. What was that light?" Morwen leaned forward, her expression serious. "It is old magic, child, very old. Our pack was not always just wolves. In the beginning, some were bonded to the moon goddess herself. They were called spirit weavers. They could heal the pack, bless the land, and commune with the spirits. They were marked by the goddess, their bodies etched with her light." Elara stared. "You mean the scars?" "They were never scars, Elara, not in the way you think. They were a lock, a map, a dormant power, waiting for a catalyst. They told me you were special the day I treated you, all those years ago, but I did not know how special. I thought it was just a strange healing pattern. But I was attacked by rogues. I remember the claws." "You were," Morwen confirmed. "But the goddess used that wound. She turned a mark of violence into a divine seal. It would only break, the power would only be released by an event of supreme emotional resonance, a true mate's acceptance or his ultimate rejection." Elara felt the blood drain from her face. Ultimate rejection. So in the Great Hall, that was me breaking? "That was you awakening," Morwen countered. "The power is now unbound, Elara, but it is new, it is raw, and it is tied to the bond you share with your Alpha." A heavy knock echoed, making Elara jump. The door opened without permission. Kalen stood there, filling the doorway, his presence sucking the air from the small room. He looked exhausted, his black hair disheveled, but his gray eyes were sharp and intense. He dismissed Morwen with a curt nod. The old healer rose slowly, patting Elara's hand. "Be wary, child. He is a man warring with his own soul, and that is a dangerous battlefield." Morwen shuffled out, closing the door, leaving Elara alone with him. The silence was heavy, suffocating. Kalen didn't move from the doorway, just stared at her, his gaze raking over her, as if seeing her for the first time. She pulled the thin blanket tighter around her, feeling exposed, though she was fully clothed. "Explain," he finally commanded. I can't," she stammered, hating the weakness in her voice. "Don't lie to me." He crossed the room in 2 strides, looming over her cot. He was so close she could smell his scent, pine and winter air. It called to her, even now. Was it a trick, a glamour you bought from a traveling witch? The accusation was so like him, so cruel, that it snapped her fear. The warmth she'd felt earlier, that humming power, returned as a flicker of anger. "A trick?" she said, her voice gaining strength. "You think I chose to be humiliated? You think I chose to be beaten and mocked my entire life, all so I could what? Glow? For what purpose, Alpha? To impress you? You who wouldn't spit on me if I was on fire."
His face hardened. "You will show me respect." Respect? She stood up, her bare feet hitting the cold stone. She was smaller than him, thinner, but for the first time, she didn't feel weak. "Respect is earned, Kalen, and you have done nothing to earn mine. You are my mate. The goddess herself tied my soul to yours, and you treated me like dirt. You let Lyra, you let all of them. You watched. You watched them break me day after day. And tonight you looked at me like I was nothing." Every word was a small, sharp blade, and they found their mark. His composure cracked. He winced, a flicker of guilt crossing his features before he stamped it down. "I did what I had to," he growled, defensive. "The pack needs a strong Luna, not a fragile thing." Fragile? Ilara's hand shot out, grabbing his wrist. He was so startled he didn't pull away. A jolt, like lightning, passed between them. His eyes widened. Her hand, it was warm, impossibly warm. "I am not fragile," she said, her voice dropping to a low, intense whisper. The air around her began to hum. "I am the one who has survived you." He couldn't breathe. The mate bond was screaming. His wolf was clawing, begging him to pull her closer, to scent her, to claim her. This close, he could see the faint, silvery lines on her collarbone disappearing under her shift. His hand lifted against his will, his fingers tracing the path of a scar on her shoulder. He wasn't disgusted. He was mesmerized. She flinched violently, slapping his hand away and stumbling back. "Don't touch me!" The rejection was so total, so visceral, that it hit him harder than any physical blow. She was rejecting him. "Ilara." His voice was different, uncertain. "You've tortured me for 2 years, Kalen. What's changed?" "Because I can do a magic trick?" she spat. "The scars are still here. I'm still me. What's changed?" He had no answer. "Get out," she whispered. "This is my tower. Then I'll leave." She strode toward the door. He blocked her path instantly, his body a wall of muscle. "You are not leaving this room. You are a potential threat. Or a target. I haven't decided which. So I'm your prisoner? You are under my protection," he bit out, the words tasting like ash. "It feels the same," she said, her eyes flashing with that strange light again. Before he could respond, a frantic pounding came from the door. "Alpha! Alpha Kalen! You must come! It's your brother!" Kalen's head snapped around. "What about Riss?" A young guard burst in, bowing hastily. "He was in the training ring, Alpha. A sparring accident. A silver-tipped blade. He's bleeding. Alpha, Morwen is with him, but it's bad. The silver, it's in his blood."
Kaelin was gone, moving faster than Alara had ever seen, a blur of shadow and fury. Ilara was left in the room, her heart pounding. Rhys, Kaelin's younger, reckless brother, the one an old memory surfaced. An attack. Rogues. But that wasn't right. Morwen's words echoed. I treated you all those years ago. Ilara's breath hitched. She remembered now. Not rogues. It was Rhys. Rhys, showing off, had picked a fight with a rival Pax patrol near the border. Ilara, only 16, had been gathering herbs nearby. They had threatened to kill Rhys for the provocation, starting a pack war. She had intervened, thrown herself in the way. She'd taken the claws meant for him. She'd been raked across the back. And when Kaelin and the warriors had arrived, Rhys, terrified, had blamed it on a rogue ambush. And Ilara, seeing the terror in the young wolf's eyes and knowing the shame it would bring Kaelin's powerful family, had stayed silent. She had let them believe the lie. She had been scarred protecting Kaelin's brother, and Kaelin and the entire pack had mocked her for the very scars she earned saving their bloodline. A new, cold fury settled over her. She wasn't a prisoner, and she wasn't fragile. She walked out of the room. The guards, distracted by the Alpha's departure, didn't stop her. She followed the scent of blood and Kaelin's sharp panic, her feet silent on the stone floors, moving toward the infirmary. When she arrived, the scene was chaos. Rhys, barely 18, was thrashing on a cot, his skin pale and clammy. A deep gash on his forearm was weeping blackish, sluggish blood, silver poisoning. Morwen was pressing a poultice to the wound, chanting, but the flesh was already turning necrotic. Kaelin was pacing, his rage a palpable force in the room. "Do something!" he roared at Morwen. "I cannot," the old healer cried, tears in her eyes. "The silver is too deep. It has reached his heart. He has minutes." "No!" Kaelin bellowed, a sound of pure, primal grief. Ilara stepped into the room. "Get out of the way," she said, her voice calm and clear. Kaelin spun, his eyes wild. "Ilara? I told you to stay. Get out of here." "You want him to live?" she asked, ignoring his command. Kaelin stared at her, dumbfounded. "What?" "Morwen," Ilara said, moving to the bedside. "Hold him still." "Child, what are you doing?" Ilara didn't answer. She looked at Rhys, at his young face contorted in pain, the face of the boy she had saved. She placed her hands on his chest, over his heart. She closed her eyes. She didn't know what she was doing, only that she had to. She reached for the humming warmth inside her, the power that had flared in the great hall. She called to it. "Please, help him." At first, nothing. Then she felt it. A cold, venomous presence inside Rhys' chest. The silver. She focused all her will, all her pain, all her rage, and pushed. The pearlescent glow returned. It flooded her hands, sinking into Rhys' skin. Kaelin gasped, falling silent. The glow traveled from her into him and then concentrated at the wound. Rhys screamed, a sharp, sudden sound, and then arched his back. With a sickening, wet noise, a cloud of black vapor steamed from the gash on his arm, dissolving in the air. The flesh, moments ago black, turned pink. The bleeding slowed, then stopped. Rhys' breathing, which had been shallow, evened out. The color returned to his face. He fell into a deep, natural sleep. Ilara collapsed, her energy spent. Kaelin caught her, his arms wrapping around her waist, easing her to the floor. He didn't let go. He held her, his grip iron, his body trembling. He stared at his brother, sleeping peacefully. He looked at Morwen, whose jaw was on the floor. And then he looked at Ilara, pale and exhausted, leaning against him. You saved him," he whispered. "Yes," she said, too tired to move. How did you?" I pulled the poison out." She looked up at him, her hazel eyes clear and sharp, all fear gone. The same way I took the claws for him all those years ago. Kalen's blood ran cold. What did you say? Ask him, she whispered, when he wakes up. Ask your brother who gave me these scars. She pushed away from him, using the last of her strength, and walked out of the infirmary, leaving Kalen in the ruins of a life he thought he knew. For 3 days, the pack barely saw their alpha. He remained secluded in the infirmary, waiting. Ilara was given new quarters, a simple but clean room in the main tower, no longer the Omega Den. The pack gave her a wide berth, their whispers a mix of fear, awe, and confusion. Lyra was conspicuously silent, watching Ilara with a new, calculating hatred. She had seen the power. She had seen the way Kalen had held her. On the 3rd day, Rice woke up. Kalen was at his side instantly. "Rice, tell me." "The truth," Kalen commanded, his voice strained. "Ilara's scars. Tell me how she got them." Rice, weak but clear-eyed, looked at his brother. The guilt he had carried for years came pouring out. He told him everything. The border challenge, the rival patrol, Ilara's intervention, the claws meant for him, his lie. Kalen listened, his face growing paler with every word. By the time Riss finished, the Alpha was shaking, not with rage, but with a profound, soul-shattering guilt. The woman he had permitted his pack to call weak, scarred, coward, had been injured saving his own blood. She had borne their mockery in silence to protect his family's honor. He had mocked her. He had hated her. He stumbled from the infirmary, his mind reeling. He found her in the small garden behind the kitchens, the only place she'd ever felt safe. She was sitting on a stone bench, her face turned to the sun. She looked different. Not just the absence of fear, but a presence, a stillness. Ilara. She opened her eyes, watching him approach. She didn't flinch. She just waited. He stopped in front of her, the great, powerful Alpha, looking utterly broken. "He told me." She nodded slowly. "I know." "Why? Why did you let us?" "Would you have believed me?" she asked simply. "I was an Omega. He was your brother. And you already despised me. You saw the scars, and you were repulsed. The truth wouldn't have mattered. It would have just been my word against his. He had no defense. She was right. I was blind. Ilara, I was a fool. A cruel, arrogant fool." "Yes," she agreed, no malice in her voice, just fact. He knelt. This time, it wasn't a stumble. It was a deliberate, agonizing lowering of his body. He knelt in the dirt at her feet, bowing his head, his hands on his knees. The Alpha of the Stonecrest pack kneeling to the scarred Omega. "Forgive me," he whispered, the words thick. My mate." Ilara looked at his bowed head, at the black hair she had once longed to touch. She felt pity, not love, not yet. But the cold, hard hatred was melting, replaced by a deep, aching sadness for the years they had both lost. I don't know if I can," she said honestly. His head snapped up, his eyes wide with a new pain. "I will earn it. I swear to you, Ilara. I will spend the rest of my life earning it. I see you now. I see your strength. The strength I tried to break. I see you." He reached out, his hand trembling, and gently, so gently, his fingers brushed the faint silver line on her cheek, the one that had bled in the great hall. She didn't flinch. The moment was charged, fragile. A new beginning. And it was shattered by a scream. "She's bewitched him! She's poisoning our pack!" Lyra burst into the garden, followed by 4 large warriors, her most loyal followers. Her face was a mask of jealous fury. Alpha Kalen, get away from her! She's a curse! She's weakened you, made you kneel! This is not our way! Kalen shot to his feet, placing himself in front of Ilara. His voice was a lethal growl. Lyra, stand down. You are challenging your alpha. No! I am saving my alpha! Lyra shrieked. She's unnatural! That glow, it's a blight! We must cleanse the pack! I am giving you one last order, Beta. Stand down. Lyra's eyes were wild. She's stolen him! She's stolen my alpha! She looked past Kalen at Ilara. He will be mine, even if I have to kill you to free him. She lunged, not at Kalen, but at Ilara. Kalen moved to intercept, but he was a split second too late. Lyra wasn't trying to get past him, she was using him. She grabbed his arm, spun, and used his own momentum to pull him off balance, while simultaneously drawing a long, silver-edged dagger from her boot. If I can't have him, she can't! She threw the dagger, aiming not for Ilara, but for Kalen's chest. She knew Ilara's magic was tied to him. She knew a true mate's rejection could break her. But what about a true mate's death? It all happened in a fraction of a second. The dagger flew. Kalen, off balance, couldn't block it. Ilara screamed, "No!" She didn't think. She moved. She threw herself in front of Kalen, a mirror image of the sacrifice she had made for his brother. The dagger plunged into her, high in the shoulder, embedding itself deep. Kalen roared, a sound of pure animalistic fury. Ilara gasped, stumbling back, her hand flying to the hilt. The silver. It burned. It burned with a cold, chemical fire, instantly attacking her newfound magic. The humming warmth inside her sputtered. "Ilara!" Kalen caught her as she fell, his eyes wide with terror. The glow flickered around her, fighting the poison, but it was weak, turning a sickly green at the edges. "See?" Lyra cackled, her eyes triumphant. "She's weak! The silver kills the taint! Warriors, seize her!" The 4 warriors loyal to Lyra advanced. Kalen laid Ilara gently on the grass and rose, his face a landscape of absolute murder. "You will die," he breathed. He shifted. It was not a normal shift. It was an explosion. His bones broke and reformed. Fur sprouted, but it was too fast, too violent. His alpha wolf, driven mad by the wounding of its mate, burst forth. He was enormous, a black-furred dire wolf, his eyes glowing red. He didn't even pause. He met the first warrior's charge, his jaws closing around the male's throat, severing his spine with a single sickening crunch. The other 3 faltered. It didn't save them. Kalen was a whirlwind of claws and fangs, a force of nature. It wasn't a fight, it was an execution. In 10 seconds, the 4 warriors were dead or dying. Lyra stared, her triumph turning to ashes. She had miscalculated. She hadn't seen this depth of rage, this absolute primal bond. Kalen turned, his massive wolf form dripping blood. He stalked toward her, a low, rumbling growl shaking the very ground. Lyra scrambled backward, falling over the bench. "Kalen, Alpha, I was wrong, please." The wolf didn't slow. "No, please," she screamed. "Kalen, stop!" The growl died in his throat. He turned. Ilara was on her knees, her face sheet white, her hand still clenching the dagger. The glow was almost gone, just a faint shimmer on her skin. Don't kill her," she panted, the silver making her speech slur. "That's not you. Don't be a monster. Not for me." He was warring with the beast, his body trembling with the effort to control it. His red-rimmed eyes locked on Alara's, and the rage receded. The red faded, replaced by his normal storm gray. He was still a wolf, but he was Kalen again. He gave Lyra one last look of utter loathing, then turned his back on her, padding to Alara. He nudged her, whining, his huge head pushing at her uninjured shoulder. "The dagger," she whispered. "It hurts. Kalen, I'm cold." The silver was quenching her light. She was dying. Kalen's panic was a tangible scent. He knew he couldn't pull it out. The silver would shred her insides. He forced the shift back, his human form reforming, naked and blood-spattered. "No, no, Alara. You saved me. Stay with me," he pleaded, gathering her into his arms. I can't," she whispered. Her eyes were fluttering. "The light, it's going out." "No," he held her tighter. "Take mine, take my strength. Live." He didn't know how, but his wolf did. He bent his head, his fangs extending, and bit into his own wrist, tearing a deep gash. He pressed the bleeding wound to her lips. "Drink," he commanded. She was too weak. "Drink, damn you!" He forced his blood into her mouth. At the first taste, her eyes shot open. The alpha's blood, full of his life force, warred with the silver. But it wasn't enough. The silver was too deep. "It's not working," she gasped. Kalen looked at the dagger, at the pale, dying light in her eyes. He was losing her. He had just found her, and he was losing her. "No," he said, a terrible resolution solidifying in his eyes. "This is a bond. You are me. I am you." He placed one hand on the hilt of the dagger and the other on her heart. "Kalen, what have you—" "I am your mate," he said, his voice raw. "Your pain is my pain. Your wound is my wound. I will not let you bear this alone." He closed his eyes and called on his own alpha power, not to fight the silver, but to connect to Alara. He pushed his own life force into her, forging a link stronger than blood, stronger than magic. "Let me take it. Give it to me." Alara screamed as a new energy surged through her, and Kalen roared, his back arching as he felt an identical, agonizing pain explode in his own shoulder. He hadn't just connected, he had transferred the wound. Alara looked down. The dagger was still in her shoulder, but the pain was gone. The glow, fed by his alpha energy, came roaring back to life, no longer soft and pearlescent, but a blazing silver-gold fire. Kalen collapsed, clutching his shoulder, a perfect, bloodless replica of Ilara's wound etched on his skin. But where Ilara's glow was fighting the silver, his body had no defense. The phantom silver poison hit his system, and his heart stuttered. "Kalen!" she cried, her voice strong. She saw what he had done. He had taken the poison into himself to save her. She didn't hesitate. She grabbed the hilt of the dagger in her shoulder and pulled. The silver blade came out with a wet, tearing sound, but her flesh, now supercharged with her magic and his, healed instantly. The wound sealed before a single drop of her blood could fall. She scrambled to him. He was pale, his lips turning blue. "Foolish, foolish man," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "You stupid, brave alpha." She placed her glowing hands on his chest, over his heart, the same way she had for Reese. But this was different. This wasn't just pulling poison. This was a union. She pushed her light into him. The silver-gold fire met the silver poison, and this time it was no contest. The light devoured the darkness. The phantom wound on his shoulder sizzled and vanished. His heart beat once, twice. His eyes snapped open. He stared up at her, at his mate, blazing like a star, her tears looking like liquid diamonds on her cheeks. Her scars, the old, ugly marks, were gone. Her back and shoulders were smooth, perfect, save for faint, intricate lines of pure, shimmering silver. "Ilara," he breathed. Lyra, who had watched all of this, transfixed in terror, finally broke. She scrambled to her feet and ran, fleeing the garden, fleeing the pack. Ilara didn't notice. She was looking at Kalen. He slowly, painfully pushed himself up. He looked at his shoulder, then at hers. He saw the healed skin, the silver lines. He looked at his own blood on her lips. He cupped her face, his thumbs brushing away her tears. You're beautiful." "I was always beautiful," she whispered, her voice shaking. "You just couldn't see." "I see now," he said, his voice thick with an emotion so deep it was shattering. "I see everything." He pulled her to him, his mouth finding hers. The kiss was not gentle. It was desperate, a claim, a promise, a prayer of gratitude. It was the sealing of a bond that had been denied, broken, and now forged in fire and blood. The light from her skin wrapped around them both, a cocoon of power. And in the garden, at the feet of their Alpha and his new Luna, the very stones began to sprout small white flowers. The land itself was healing. The aftermath was swift. Lyra was declared a traitor, exiled and hunted. Rhys, fully recovered, made a public confession to the entire pack, detailing Ilara's original sacrifice. He knelt before her and begged her forgiveness, which she gave freely. The pack, humbled and ashamed, followed their Alpha's lead. The Great Hall, once the site of her deepest humiliation, became the site of her ascension. Kalen stood before his pack, Ilara at his side. She wore no crown, no jewels. She wore a simple white dress, her skin glowing, the silver lines on her back and shoulders visible, a mark of her power. Kalen didn't ask for their acceptance. He commanded it. But he didn't need to. The pack had felt the shift. The territory, which had been suffering a mild, dry blight, was suddenly thriving. The river ran clearer. The prey was more plentiful. Ilara's magic, unlocked and bonded to her Alpha, was healing them. That night, in the Alpha's den, their den, Kalen stood with her on the balcony, overlooking their lands under the full moon. He was quiet for a long time, watching her. He reached out and traced the silver lines on her shoulder, the lines that had once been hideous scars. "I miss them sometimes," he said softly. Ilara turned, surprised. "Miss? The scars? Why? They were ugly." "They were yours," he said, his voice thick. "They were the map of your strength. They were the test that I failed. They remind me of my arrogance and of your grace." "They weren't a test for you, Kalen," she said, placing her hand over his heart. "They were my prison. You and this," she touched her own heart, "were the key." He pulled her against him, burying his face in her hair, breathing in her scent of willow, rain, and starlight. "I will never stop trying to be worthy of you, my Luna, my mate, my everything." "You already are," she whispered, tilting her head back. "You fell, you knelt, but you rose. You rose for me." He kissed her, slowly, deeply. It was a kiss of reverence, of peace, and of a future that was, for the first time, brighter than any star. He lifted his head and howled, a deep, resonant sound of joy and possession that echoed across the valley. And for the first time, a second howl joined his, clear, powerful, and ringing with light. The howl of his Luna.